Okay.
I think we are ready. I just started in presenter mode notes, and now I can't see anybody.
Okay.
So,
But we can
uh,
still see you, and we can see your presentation as well as the closed captioning.
excellent, excellent. Well, just let us know when we're ready to go, and we will get started.
Okay. Well, it was set to start at 4:30. It is now 4:31. FYI.
So we should get started. Great. Well, I'll kick us off then, and then I will turn things over to our first member of our panel to get started. So thank you so much for having us. We're excited to be here with everyone today. My name is Catherine. I'm a senior researcher here at American Institutes for Research, AIR. I'm joined by a number of my wonderful colleagues to talk about the power of teacher leadership to transform CS education, and specifically some of the work that we've been doing around teacher leadership in CS with a micro-credential pilot.
Thank you, Catherine. Can you all hear me?
Yep.
Are you all ready for me to go ahead?
Yes. Hold on just a second. I'm getting can you all hear multiple dialogue? It's just me. Okay. So I'm sorry. Give me just a moment. Okay. Sorry about that. I had another one of our tabs for Hopin open, and I had other folks chatting in that. All right. Sorry for the delay. I'd love to introduce my colleague Verna, who's going to kick us off today with just a little bit about our work in microcredentials and computer science at AIR before we get into all of our specifics. So Verna, take it away.
Thank you so much, Catherine. And we lost the PowerPoint, so can you share your screen again?
Yes. My apologies. Trying to do tech right and not doing it as well as I should. So
no worries at all. Thank you, Catherine. And good afternoon, everyone. I appreciate you all joining us at the tail end of what seemed like a very exciting day. So appreciate you all joining us today again. My name is Verna Lalbihari. I'm a senior managing director at the American Institutes for Research. My background is in digital and personalized learning. I serve as a lead working on growing work in that space. I've also done a lot of work with micro-credentials, both at AIR and also in my prior life as the state ed tech director for the state of North Carolina. So our goal today is really to give you a window into our CS for All Teachers community. It's an online virtual community of practice that is really intended to empower our CS teachers through this virtual community. The goal when we launched this work was to become the go-to place, like the resource for support, for our classroom teachers across the US that were really thrown into the CS space. A lot of our CS teachers are not native CS experts, but are often math teachers, science teachers, or teachers from another domain that may be tapped for computer science. So we saw the need to build a community and went forth and did that with a series of supports along the way. The next slide really speaks to, it provides very high level overview of our logic model, which speaks to the needs in the field. And we know that a lot of our CS teachers were really grapple with the fact that they're isolated. They're often one one or two here and there, either at their school or in their district. So in addition to the isolation and not really CS not really being their core subject matter expertise, we wanted to be able to provide a vehicle that would support teachers that are isolated, both across the spectrum of novice, intermediate, and veteran teachers. So we built in scaffolds and approaches that really speak to teachers regardless of where they sit on that continuum of CS-ness, if that's a word. So our goals were really to connect, communicate, collaborate, but really connect our novice teachers, allow our intermediate teachers to get a deeper sense of learning and get more integrated into the CS space. And then also challenge our veteran teachers, because they are few and far between, but we do have some veteran teachers that we wanted to engage in leadership roles or engage in more challenging supports and teaching of CS. And then with a lot of our work, we really want to be able to contribute to the field writ large. So really, how do we support the community of CS educators across the board? We did this through a series of tasks. Definitely community engagement is huge. We have a whole team behind the few of us that are here today that support the virtual engagement and community of practice. And I have found in my work with virtual communities that they take a lot of care, feeding, and nurturing. So we definitely have some supports that we built into to do that. We also have a great resource, CS for All Teachers website, that provides a lot of the go-to information for CS educators. And then because we're a research shop, we also have a layer of R&E, research and evaluation, and a team that is focused on that. The one thing that I would flag with regards to our work is that this has been going on for a while. I want to say the community started most probably, the genesis of it was a small NSF community that I want to say started in 2013, so it predated me at AIR. In 2014, we got some grant support to support this work more holistically. And I want to say in about 2016, we rebranded as CS for All Teachers with a real focus on being able to support the teachers aligned to this logic model that I just shared with you. And we're now in the middle of a 3-year grant cycle, actually the tail end of a 3-year grant cycle. That is focused on this work. So that's our CS community in a nutshell. That's really the basis of the community, the way our teachers live and work. And so I thought it would be a good place to start out. I also wanted to share with you some of the activities, and I'm not going to go into the details of this, but this is a neat infographic that really speaks to the activities that the community has been engaged in between, I believe this is a year's worth of work, June 2020 through last month, May 2021. So you can see that it's a very vibrant community. We have subgroups, and teachers could affiliate with any kind of small subgroup. They range from, teachers that are grade banded to the one that I like is CS in the wild. So teachers, regardless of where you are, you come in and you join. And I see Theresa nodding and smiling. So thank you, Theresa. We've hosted webinars. We've definitely a repository of really good resources. So if you haven't checked us out, please Google CS for All Teachers and take a peek at some of the work that we've done. And our community is vibrant and active. They're active on Twitter. They're active on LinkedIn. They're active on all the social media. So definitely a great resource. But I did also want to pivot a little bit and position, the professional development landscape and some of the challenges that we have with professional development. We know that when it comes to professional development writ large and professional development specifically for CS, one size does not fit all. I just shared with you that we have, novice, veteran, and advanced teachers. So we're really being able to address the unique needs of teachers is really important, and micro-credentials lend themselves to that. We also know that our educators are really challenged with the PD that we get. The satisfaction rate, hovers around 20% of traditional PD, right? So these are the challenges that we face with traditional PD. And so thinking through how we address and increase that satisfaction rate that is really grounded in authentic problems of practice and artifacts that educators can very quickly turn around and implement in their classroom is where we want to go. Micro-credentials allow us to do some of that. And then likewise, and you're all most probably from school districts across the US, we spend a lot of money on professional development. The dollar amount quoted is most probably from a few years ago. It's most probably higher than that right now. But really making sure that we have some ROI, some returns on our investment in professional development, and that are more important, that our professional development is meeting the needs of our educators is definitely an important aspect that we believe micro-credentials allow for that. Next slide, Catherine. A little bit on the why. We chose to go down the micro-credential path and develop a micro-credentials for teacher leaders of CS. And I alluded to some of these. They're really grounded in that authentic application of skills and competencies. Micro-credentials tend to be competency-based, so educators have to demonstrate their competencies through a series of artifacts. We find that really grounds educators. We definitely evidence-based approach, so looking at professional development that has an evidence-based, and so it allows us to be able to collect and track data and kind of look at some of the changes over time. And the one that really that resonates with me as someone who cares about personalized learning for students and also personalized professional development for adults is that micro-credentials really allow for that differentiation. Like I said, meeting educators where they are, moving along that continuum of learning. And then we have a few others around, the self-paced works for a lot of educators, and there are some reduced costs associated with micro-credentials, especially when it comes to travel, like not traveling to, conferences or PD sessions. And, with this past year, we're also getting more and more comfortable with learning virtually. So I anticipate an uptick in some of the opportunities like this. Maybe I should have started with the slide. The slide seems misplaced right now. But this is the definition that we've used as our working definition for micro-credentials, really a micro certification that that provides a demonstration of application of a very specific competency. The key here is that they're small, right? And we talk about micro-credential stacks, and Catherine will go into the ones with the CS teacher leader, but they usually build on each other. And I think taking a micro-credential here, there, may not make a lot of sense, but if we have a coherent stack that adds up to a larger credential, is usually the way to go. So we talk about them as being stackable. And then finally, I think my last slide, and you can just go through these really quickly. Thank you so much. I was being smart and added animation in there, but I think this slide just really gives you a high-level snapshot view of what micro-credentials are, right? And I spoke to some of that earlier, but more importantly, what they're not. And this is where I think, debunking some of the myths around micro-credential, I think micro-credentials are really important. They really get us moving away from seed time, right? They're artifact-based, demonstration of mastery, so the competencies are really critical in there. And they're, contrary to popular belief, they're not an online course per se. So, and there's no specific, sequencing that you need to go through. It's really self-based. So you don't need to go in and do set times. We chose to have a little, facilitated time together, but there are various use cases for how states, districts, and schools are adopting them. And the other important piece, I would say, it's on the other column, but it's what's really exciting is the learning by doing. The application makes it really authentic and real for educators, because you can learn something today and go try and implement it in your classroom tomorrow, get some feedback on it, and then strengthen it and go back and do it again. So that's what excites me about it. I believe this is my last slide, so I hope that I've given you enough information as a frame of reference for our conversation today. Thank you so much for having me.
Thank you, Verna. Always a pleasure to hear you talk about MicroCredentials and their promise, because yeah, we think that they are very promising, which is why, as part of our CS for All community work, it was about a little over a year and a half ago, that we started talking about developing a microcredential around teacher leadership in CS, and decided, well, maybe we should create a pilot. So Verna's already shared some of the reasons why we decided to go into this angle of the work. I'll share just a little bit more detail. So, we were really interested in this intersection between teacher leadership and computer science teaching through our work with the CS for All community. We realized that so many of those expert CS teachers that we were working with faced a lot of challenges in their work that teachers of traditional subject areas don't usually face, like building a CS program from scratch. An English teacher doesn't usually have to create an English program from scratch at their school. Advocacy, policy, addressing equity, having to collaborate with colleagues. All of these are things that all teachers do, but we found in our work over the years that for CS teachers, they really often, to do their work just as a CS teacher, had to go above and beyond, and that extended into what we see in traditional teacher leadership skills. So we thought that was a really interesting connection and something we should explore a little bit more. We also, as Verna noted, heard from so many CS educators that they just don't have colleagues immediately to connect with always. Sometimes they are the only CS teacher in their school, sometimes the only one in their district. And so building these networks and fostering these networks was really important, so that folks can connect with each other, collaborate, inspire each other, learn from each other. We also have heard that, beyond advocating for their students, teachers in CS often have to advocate for themselves, to convince other teachers to work together to integrate CS content into their lessons. Sometimes they have to advocate for equipment, materials that they need. And as Verna touched on, professional learning and professional development is a really big one. One of the things that we have heard a lot is that professional learning for a CS educator is kind of similar to getting certified, where you're cobbling together this series of different kinds of professional learning to try to get at all of those different aspects of what it means to be a CS educator, which can be kind of difficult. So all of this culminated to some ahas from us and from our ambassadors, who said, to be able to advocate well, we need to be able to talk about our work. We need to be able to share our goals. We need to be able to share our accomplishments, so that we can help get the resources we need or give students what they need. So all of this led to us saying, well, maybe microcredentials are a good solution here, but specifically teacher leadership in computer science, microcredentials. So our general goals for this were that we wanted to figure out what are those key knowledge, skills, and actions, which we're going to call KSAs, that define the work and expertise of CS educators, i.e. teacher leaders in computer science. We want to give CS educators an opportunity to acknowledge the work they're already doing. Like I said, if for CS educators who have been cobbling together professional learning to try to continue to develop and build their expertise and build professionally, some of that is not part of what we call traditional PD. You might be going to a conference that you're not getting credit for. You might be doing all of this job-embedded collaborative work with your colleagues that you're not getting credit for. So we thought this might be a really interesting way to formalize and codify all of the professional learning that's already happening and put it in a package where CS educators can actually get credit for it towards licensure or other kinds of requirements. And then, of course, I think the obvious, building those connections and just helping to foster that sense of self-efficacy and expertise. So we worked with a couple of our former ambassadors who are in teacher leader roles in CS to try to put together what these micro-credentials might look like. We really wanted to ensure that they had face value with the community, that folks who looked at this group of micro-credentials said, yes, those look like what I think of when I think of teacher leadership in computer science. And we ended up with these 5: equity in CS, building a CS program, collaboration in CS, advocacy in CS, and policy in CS. We ended up calling these a cluster, which is a little different than a stack. Sometimes you see these micro-credentials where it's like you take the intro one, and then you take the one that's 2.0, and then 3.0, and you get subsequently more advanced and build on content. We realized in our conversations with other teacher leaders in CS that it's not like equity is the most important thing and all of this other stuff kind of doesn't matter as much, or that you have to start in policy and before you can get to these other things. And what we thought was, it's not so much that this is a stack as the different pieces that fit together to become one holistic package of what teacher leadership in CS is. So how did we do this? We didn't just come up with this from nothing. We started by doing a crosswalk of the CSTA teaching standards, as well as 3 of the leading frameworks of teacher leader standards, and looked for where we saw areas of similarity, where was there alignment, where were these kind of culminating in an intersection of teacher leadership and CS education. And we found a lot of intersections, actually, which is really interesting. From those intersections, we created the KSAs that go into each of those micro-credentials. So here are 2 examples from the equity in CS micro-credential. One of the KSAs is to create inclusive teacher collaboration and school culture. You can see some of the standards that aligns to there, and ensure curriculum, instruction, assessment, school organization, and school culture is accessible and equitable. Great, and we see 2 standards that align to that there. Each of our micro-credentials ended up with 3 different categories of these different KSAs. Personal development, which is developing your own knowledge, skills, beliefs, etc. Developing a CS program, school level activities, and then developing other CS educators, that collaborative, leading other professional learning that could be within your school or beyond. And we thought this is kind of where that development starts. You probably start with personal development, move on to developing a program, and then start to think about developing others in the work. So here's a screenshot example. You can see we've only got 2 of the 3 domains listed here, just because you wouldn't be able to, this would just be a blur. It'd be way too tiny to see. But you can see we've got personal development and develop a CS program as those domains. Again, this is from the equity in CS micro-credential. You can see the KSAs we have listed and the knowledge, skills, and actions that we say teacher leaders in CS need to be able to know and be able to do, and their alignment with the standards. So how does one actually get a micro-credential? Well, we have a wonderful group of pilot participants who have been working towards these micro-credentials, coming together, meeting with us, and then working on them on their own. And so what they've been submitting to earn their micro-credentials are these 3 types of reflections. So first, just, what is this topic? So being able to very clearly articulate what is equity in CS, what is policy in CS. Kind of like having that elevator pitch ready, being able to say it really succinctly. And then a reflection for each one of those KSAs. So, if one of those is that you're going to create a collaborative culture, of short reflection on how have they demonstrated that? How have they created a collaborative culture in their work? And then finally, a summary that just kind of summarizes what the most important elements have been for their own learning and how they're going to continue to apply this in the future. So maybe there's something that they wanted to be able to demonstrate and they haven't been able to quite get there yet, but it's something they're going to keep working towards. That's something that's great to put into the summary. So altogether, through these 3 reflections, the idea is that these will really give a deep and yet holistic picture of that teacher leader's knowledge, their understanding, their expertise in this topic. A little bit about these reflections. So, it's about the work that folks have done, not their general beliefs, not, what this research says X is important, but what have they done to do this, to promote this work? They asked to have artifacts that substantiate and provide context, but they're not required for everything. And part of that's because there are some things that just cannot be proven. So, for example, being able to reflect on your own bias and privilege, that's something that you probably can't provide an artifact for, but you can reflect on and talk about. And finally, these are competency-based. It's not a test where we say, oh, if you get 75%, then that's good enough. The idea here is that you have to demonstrate everything, be able to show that everything is demonstratable before you can earn the micro-credential. So you can get one of these 3 different ratings for each of the reflections. Demonstrated means, yep, great, it's there. Progressing means that some of it's there, but some of it's not. And the experts who are evaluating these micro-credential submissions will provide feedback to say, here's what's missing, here's what you need to continue to work on. Even if it's demonstrated, the evaluator might give feedback on things to consider or things to continue to do. But definitely, if there's something missing, here's how this needs to be strengthened. And then if it's not met, meaning just like there's that needs to be retried. There's not a lot of specifics to go on. Our belief is that by the time somebody is really ready to submit a micro-credential, they're probably going to get demonstrated for everything or most things, because by this time you've already engaged in all of the learning. You've already used this micro-credential as a roadmap to see what do I need to know and do and learn and where do I need to grow. So by the time you get to submission, that's when you're saying, yep, I feel good, I feel solid, and now I really want to get credit for this. I want a certificate I can show my administrator or professional development staff, so I can get credit for it, or at least communicate to others that I do have expertise in this. Well, just very last thing, I wanted to give a quick example of what might these reflections look like. So again, here's the KSA that's about counteracting personal bias and reflecting on your own agency. I'm not going to read this verbatim to you, but this is an example reflection talking about how they were looking at the inequities in their school, realized they were thinking about racial inequities, but not necessarily low income inequities, thought about the emotional barriers and other barriers to CS participation, tried to make their classroom a more welcoming place, worked on recruiting more diverse students and just learning how to better support students and thinking about how their mindset contributed to maybe some of these inequities, and then also thinking about their agency in being able to address those. You can see it's really short. Being able to put this kind of work together in this really succinct, clear way is really great because it's essentially you've created a boilerplate of how to talk to a school board about it, how to talk to a policymaker about this. And you suddenly, by doing these reflections, have all of the language you need to do that sort of advocacy work or to share with other decision makers who can really help to understand these issues. So my last slide before I turn things over to our two other presenters who are going to talk about their experiences actually working towards these micro-credentials is just, where are we in this work? We began this work officially back in January. We've had 5 sessions, meetings with all of the pilot participants to talk about these topics, talk about their progress, and we are now in the middle of submission windows. So we've got folks who have submitted, folks who are still working on these, and we are really excited about what we've seen so far, and our plan is to continue to offer these micro-credentials in a cluster to future cohorts. So yeah, we're really excited about what we're seeing so far and hopefully what we'll see soon. And so with that, I'd love to turn things over to the first of our educators who are joining us today, Theresa, who's been working on micro-credentials and part of our group. I'm going to turn it over to Theresa to talk about her experiences.
Hi, everybody. Oh, I'm excited to be here. My name is Theresa Golterman, and I am 30 years in the classroom. So, and I am, you know, Verna mentioned that I'm somewhere on the continuum of CS-ness. I like that, continuum of CS-ness. I don't know where I am, but I taught science for like 24 years. And I got started in computer science on my journey because of an old MOOC. If you remember the massive online courses, they're still around, I guess. But back in 2012, Invent to Learn, Sylvia Martinez and Gary Steger worked with MIT and Mitch Resnick, and they put out this MOOC about with their book Invent to Learn, and it was all the community maker spaces were just coming on, and I got on the bandwagon as a science teacher, and I started doing things after school, and then with MIT, Scratch developed. So I became an after-school computer science makerspace teacher, and everyone loved my after-school space, but I was tired. I didn't want to stay after school every day. So I advocated for an engineering class, and then from there, we were doing so much computer science that I advocated for a computer science class, but to hook everybody in 2015, I had to call it game design. So, and in my school, I was able to teach this class that I used Code.org's curriculum with. And so I thought I was making strides, but then 5 years went by and really, no one even knew I was teaching computer science but me. And so I started searching for legitimacy because I knew I was reading the literature and, I was in CS for All and CSTA, the Computer Science Teachers Association was ramping up. And you said something else, Verna, about there's a lot of care and feeding needed for the PLCs and those communities. And it was hard to find a community. And I'm just really so happy that CS for All and this program showed up, and it's definitely all ramping up. So I grabbed onto it, trying to legitimize my role and now I actually call myself a computer science teacher. I was an elective teacher until the beginning of this program. And so I have a lot of, teaching experience, and now I'm fully teaching computer tech ed and no longer science, and my 2 computer science classes that I have written. So when I found this, I grabbed onto it, and I really, really looked forward to our meetings where we just had professional colleagues to talk with. I found a community, and that was so exciting. And then to be able to have a micro-credential, the idea, it was a pilot program, but I was really so excited to be able to participate and get accepted, and I wasn't sure what it was going to entail, but I was ready because I found a community. But through our meetings and reading our scholarly articles and and just having our community, I felt really that I'd made it. And so now to have this micro-credential on top of that is just really good. And I put it on my signature because I just got approved. I actually did get approved I've received my micro-credentials in 2 things. I chose, we were all asked to choose 2 of 5 micro-credentials for this program because it's not really easy to put together. There is the evidence piece that I'll talk to you in a minute. And I chose advocacy and building a program. So we were asked to pick one that maybe we didn't have to reach as far and one we needed to reach. So one that we had to maybe do some more work to really be able to prove that we deserve this micro-credential. And I felt like I'd been advocating for a long time, and I felt that, I built a program, but I needed to do more. So what I really liked is that it wasn't just my knowledge of computer science that I learned on my own. I have learned it and I teach it. Like most of us science teachers, we learned on our own through grassroots, but having being able to put all of this together on paper, I had not done before. So it was a lot harder. Not that I felt like I had lots of evidence, but putting it on paper and finding the evidence took some time, and it really made me think and stretch. So that was the leadership piece. I had the computer science teacher piece, I felt, and then I really had to work at developing that leadership piece. And because I had to work at that, I am a leader now. I am actually seen as the content expert as we build our program district-wide. So while I have my classes in my school, and then I've convinced the other middle schools to teach computer science, the courses that I've written, we still didn't have recognition in the broader school. And now in Virginia, that's where I am in Virginia, we are integrating computer science K through 8. And so my district has called on me because I've been advocating all year and making sure they understood that I'm a computer science teacher. They've called on me to be the content expert to help develop that integration pathway. And so that's really why I joined this so that I could have legitimacy. So and then also so that I could maybe develop a pathway for myself moving forward as a leader in my state, in my district. And so far I have the district now, just got to work towards the state, perhaps. And so the hardest piece was putting everything on paper, finding the evidence. And I used emails, lots of my conversations. I developed a PLC with my own school district computer science teachers, and I called us computer science teachers. I made us a Teams space because we use Microsoft Teams. We used that space, and I put computer science teachers on there, and everyone was confused for a little while, and I just kept the conversation and talking about it, and now we are an official computer science group. Sometimes you just have to push. And actually creating that, we had to do an elevator speech during one of our meetings, had to create a video, and I spent some time on that, and I used that video, that elevator speech. I've used it quite a few times. That really helped. So the program has not only helped me just to build my knowledge and understanding of what it means to be a leader, it also has helped me develop confidence and that I am a leader. But it wasn't easy. I definitely feel like I had to prove everything. I screenshotted emails, documents, conversations that I've had with my district to try to, and my teachers to try to make sure that we're promoting computer science. So advocacy and building a program, those are the 2 micro-credentials that I worked towards, and I got them. And now I'm on to the other 3 in the stack.
Excellent. Thank you, Theresa, so much. I am glowing hearing how positive this has been for you. And I think that's just so exciting, that legitimacy piece, right? That that's something that I think can get easily overlooked, but it's really nice to be able to say, yeah, I'm an expert in this. I'm a leader in this, and I can prove it.
Can I tell you one more thing? I got
Sure.
a job. I got a job in computer science now for the summer. Because of this program, I advocated. So I'm working with Code VA, which is it's a professional development organization. And you had also mentioned that traditional PD satisfaction rates are low. And so I'm now on the forefront of trying to improve that professional development. So I connected with them in March or April, and they hired me. And today was my first day, so I had to wear my T-shirt.
Oh, congrats. Well, see, you're already going towards the state level. Upwards, in 5 years, you'll be Secretary of Education.
Yes.
That's the plan.
Computer science education.
Right. Well, thank you so much, Theresa. It's wonderful to hear all of this. I do want to make sure we have time to also hear from David, who has also been part of our pilot and working towards his own micro-credentials and probably has similar and different things to share. So, David, I will turn it over to you.
Thank you. I'm excited to be here, excited to share my experience throughout the micro-credential policy. And I wanted to give just a little bit of background of where I've been and where I'm currently at and where I'm going. I'm a STEM and computer science teacher. I've been in the classroom for the better part of 10 years, teaching core subjects and most recently computer science and STEM for middle school. It's been an amazing and rewarding experience. This past year, I was provided the unique opportunity to be an Albert Einstein Fellow. And to be an Albert Einstein Fellow, you have the opportunity to serve in the national education arena. You do that by spending the better part of the year working with federal agencies in U.S. congressional offices, in various agencies. My placement was the NASA Office of System Engagement. As part of an Einstein Fellow, you have the opportunity to apply your knowledge and various classroom experiences to various education programs and policy efforts that not only equip teachers nationally, but can equip you as far as working in the national network and better understanding challenges and possibilities in STEM and computer science education. At the closure of that fellowship, we bring all of that back to our various systems and we enact that change. So throughout the micro-credential program, I had the opportunity to work with amazing educators and increase that dialogue to how we can increase computer science. I chose two that were kind of heavy within my fellowship, which were building equity in computer science and policy as well. So when I went about that, I said, how can we do this? We have to initiate that national dialogue of computer science. How can we engage more educators to be in leadership roles? How can we get them to improve and expand their reach and the quality of CS education, both inside our classrooms, and within our schools? Another question I ask, how can we contribute to the development of state-level CS policy standards throughout education? How can we explore these strategic connections that these communities have? How can we catalyze new avenues of CS teacher preparation, PD, and curriculum development? And working on these micro-credentials gave me that opportunity to do that. We're promoting outreach. We're promoting outreach and communication with not only our local, regional, and national stakeholders, but we're doing that through direct conversations about CS policy. The micro-credentials enabled us to kind of branch out of that comfort zone. It gave us the opportunity to, explore, new avenues and build on and demonstrate successful relationships and bring in new partnerships. We had to include a lot of detail. We had to look at how are these standards relevant. How are we creating these new relationships? How are we creating these new partnerships to include specific details? How can we revamp professional development in a way to implement and scale towards K-12 computer science? And working throughout these micro-credentials, it really enabled me to grow new interests. How can we pass these new policies to boost computer science? Because, of course, computer science is relevant in everything that we're teaching across the curriculum. And throughout these different micro-credentials, we're able to add in new ideas and new details in order to, build those new connections. So working on those micro-credentials, that was kind of one way that we were enabled to put the policy making into effect, build new equitable relationships and new partners. The various activities, lots of research. I love to research. How can we bring research in to demonstrate these masteries, to demonstrate mastery? How can we bring in reflection to bring in new ideas to influence this policy making? So working on the micro-credentials was one way that we were able to continue advocating and bring in new ideas in computer science. So again, I'm kind of bringing in these new ideas and sharing the new ideas that have been stated already. So some great ideas.
Hey, thanks, David.
Thank you.
I think that so much of the work that you're doing, the questions that you're asking, they're so important. And, I think they're things that policymakers, really resonate with. I can see you standing up in front of a group of policymakers and leaders and sharing these and really sparking some good conversations. So thank you so much. Well, that is the end of us talking, and we've got a couple of minutes left here at the end. And so just wondering if anybody has any questions or things that you just want to reflect on. And I'm going to stop sharing because I haven't been able to see anybody as I've been in presentation mode. I'll come back here. I can see everybody's faces.
Well, one, I know a few of the participants wanted to see if they can get access to the presentation. So if you could drop the link in the chat, that would be very beneficial. In addition, I guess as you can see now, there are a few questions, so you can address those. One was about, what platform are the micro-credentials offered through? And then there's another one that asks you to talk about pilot teachers, how they met as a cohort, and what does the support of those educators look like? And I'll drop back out.
No, thank you. So yes, we will share presentation slides. I don't have the link right now. I want to answer questions. So we will either share it with our organizer to email out to all of y'all, or we'll hopefully get it in the chat. Platform. So right now, these micro-credentials are just offered through AIR and the cohorts that we are running. We are just finishing up our very first cohort with our very first pilot group, David and Theresa, part of our group. And we were thrilled to find out that they didn't say, wow, this is terrible, this is totally off. You guys have a lot of revisions to make. But we have learned a lot, I think, through the process, hearing the things that have stood out to everybody who's participated, the questions that have come up. And so we're going to continue to use those to refine those supports that we provide for completing the micro-credentials, which we'll talk about in just a second. And so I wish I could just tell you hey, go to this link and you can get it. But we're still a little early in the process. So let's say for now, let's say if you're interested, email me. I'll put my email in the chat box. It's on a slide, but since I've got the slides off, I'll just put it here. We are hoping to start our next cohort in approximately October 2021, so pretty soon, but we have a couple more details to work out first. So yeah, let us know if you're interested, and we love to maybe see you in our second cohort, or maybe even the third cohort if October 2021 is too soon for you, which I can imagine. I'd be like, oh my gosh, I'm so tired. I'd like a vacation, and then I'll think about October.
Well, I just wanted to speak to that because, it wasn't a series of webinars. It wasn't a course. And Verna said that's not a course. And I wasn't sure what to expect. It was a community of support to help us build our skills, build on what we've already done. So really, we had our talk once a month or however we met, we talked and shared, and then we had homework, which was to prepare for our micro-credentials, gather evidence, and explore, what it meant to be a teacher leader in CS.
Yeah, thanks, Theresa. Yeah, that's so the support. We had this these 5 sessions. We aligned them with the 5 different micro-credentials. We had a shorter pilot. We only had January through June, pretty much. So it was 1 semester. We are hoping that our future cohorts will be a full school year. We'll give people some more time, and especially we know spring is tough, right? We can get an earlier start, makes teachers' lives a little bit easier. But we may also be expanding those supports to have more meetings. They're a little less, more connection points. Maybe some other more targeted supports to help folks make those really specific connections with each other and share info. I think also coming into this year, we were starting from scratch. We didn't really know what kinds of things folks would talk about, because there's not just one way to be a teacher leader in CS, right? And there's not just one way to be a teacher leader, but we didn't feel like we could really provide any bounds on that. And we're sort of afraid of, if we put out like 3 examples, then we're saying we're almost defining it. We really wanted to leave it open-ended. But through this first pilot, we now have all of these incredible examples from the work that our pilot participants have shared. And so we still, don't want to try to define things too much. But as we continue to offer cohorts, I think we'll get more and more examples of what it means to be a teacher leader in CS that others can work from. So again, I'll just say thank you, David and Theresa, not only just for participating, but for sharing your work with everyone else. It's really great.
You're welcome.
I see another, we got a shameless plug. No worries. We love shameless plugs. At our micro-credentials on CS instructional strategies. Oh, that's really great. So that is, one difference in this work, is we said, there are some resources out there on CS content knowledge, right? I wouldn't say that there are, that world is infinite and there's everything available you could ever want to know. But there are some resources out there on CS content knowledge. In fact, AIR has a couple of micro-credentials that I believe are on computational thinking. Verna's going to correct me if I'm wrong. Nope, that's right. Yes. But it was that teacher leadership in CS piece we saw that was really missing. And that's how you do the work. Once you've got the CS knowledge, to do the work, you really need those skills. So we are always excited to see, what other resources are out there, and that are out there that folks can, get into without having to travel or, get a long weekend off to go to this thing. So it's exciting. I know I always appreciate professional development and professional learning experiences if I can do them at midnight on a Tuesday, because sometimes that's the time I've got. And I don't want that to be the only thing, but having those opportunities is valuable to me, and I know is valuable to lots of teachers. That's the only free time you've got too.
I just wanted to chime in and say, Marie, I believe we're familiar with the You Teach model. I think some of our colleagues are collaborating with you all, maybe on the evaluation components of that. So that's great. I also want to give a shameless plug for Catherine. When this was a concept, they pitched it to me, and I was like, "Oh, that is really interesting." So Catherine is my go-to person for anything around teacher leaders and teacher leadership. And I'm like, "Oh, how neat would that be? A mashup of her teacher leadership experience and CS." And one of our former colleagues, Melissa Raspberry, was like, "Oh, absolutely, we should do this." So I've watched it develop from a concept into the actual content, and they engaged me in QAing and being the QA person for the content, and then to actually see the pilot come to life and have David and Theresa here today is just phenomenal. So we've put together a really fabulous program, definitely one that we want to fine tune and be able to offer moving forward. So feel free to hit Catherine up. I see her email is in there. If you have any further questions, or if you think through unique or creative use cases for the micro-credential cluster, I think we'd be open to hearing that as well. So
Yeah,
thank you all.
Thank you, Verna. It's very kind of you. Yeah, I would say email us if you are interested. We are hoping, again, we have a couple more details to iron out, but we are hoping that we'll know at the beginning of September when we'll be opening up the next cohort. And if not by then, hopefully very shortly after that. If you watch the CS for All Teachers space, we will be putting out info through those channels as well. So if you're interested and you lose my email, don't forget CS for All Teachers. Go check them out, and you follow them, you'll see info on this once we've got those details ironed out. Also, feel free to just email me if you have a question or a shower thought that you want to share. You don't necessarily have to be just interested in the cohort to get in touch. Oh, and thank you, Verna, for putting that in the chat. All right. Well, we'll give Verna's better at wait time than I am. I have no wait time tolerance, which is probably a good reason why I'm out of the classroom now. So let's say if there's any other questions, we'd be happy to answer them. But it is also, you know, after 5 p.m. Eastern time on a Monday, and so we'll also give you guys 2 or 3 minutes back if you would like those. And just want to say thank you again.
Thank you all, and thank you to our teachers, David and Theresa.
Thank you.
Thank you. Keep up the good work.
Thank you. It was my pleasure.
All right. Bye, everyone.
Bye, everyone. Take care.